Sup, guys? A horrible weekend. Another slight loss yesterday, although it wasn't as bad as Saturday, except emotionally, because both teams that won the conference championships in the NFL, I think, are the teams nobody wanted to win. Just awful. I mean, Baltimore, nobody expected their defense to start out that badly, man. A defense that was like historically good against the pass, and they allow Patrick Mahomes, even though he is good, to put up whatever it was, like I think at least tie the record for consecutive passes that were completed to start the game. I don't think anybody expected that, even though Baltimore's defense completely shut them down in the second half and really turned it around. And then the offense never really got going. I don't think anybody expected, even though Kansas City's defense is good, a Baltimore offense that averages, I think, 38 points a game at home this year or something like that, to basically not score at all. I mean, I don't think anybody expected that either, especially the way they came back after they gave up that first touchdown. They had a nice drive for a touchdown right after that, and it looked like things were going to turn around, but that was not to be. They also had 3 turnovers. Like, when you're -3 in turnovers, you're just not going to win, man. Like, outside of those turnovers, Baltimore did enough that they could have won the game, like, statistically. Maybe not covered, I don't know, but there was some other, like, BS going on. There was one, like, totally obvious defensive holding, just absolutely blatant on Kansas City that wasn't called. So I mentioned that reffing crew with, I think Sean Smith is his name, likes to help road teams. Absolutely ridiculous. There was the Zay Flowers. I don't even know what to say about it. Just hate it. Everybody's sick of the Kansas City Chiefs, man. I was watching the game in the Atlanta airport, and the entire place was rooting for Baltimore. And Baltimore scored that touchdown early in the game. Everybody went insane. It was madness. There were like maybe 2 people in the whole place rooting for the Chiefs, and the whole rest of the place, I was in like this kind of like food court type of area. The whole place just like erupted, and we're definitely rooting for Baltimore. Jesus. I just hated it. And then Lamar Jackson's completions got there, but apparently I should have gone with pass attempts over 28.5 or whatever it was. That seemed like the worst of the 2 numbers to me, but his completion percentage was really low in the game, which I didn't expect. I expected more high completion types of throws from him in the game. I mean, I was right about it being a more competitive game, at least, where he'd have to throw more. So that prop did still win. It's still cash, but the pass attempts would have cashed easier. So there was that. The second game, I mean, Detroit should have won the game, man. They totally dominated the first half. They had the game in their grasp. I know people are going to bash Dan Campbell for that first coaching decision to go for it on 4th and 2, but Detroit had the best 4th down conversion percentage in the NFL, I believe. Really good offense. A 4th and 2 is probably over 50% for that team to convert that, whereas it was a long field goal try had they attempted the field goal at that point. This is the first one. I think he might have gone for it on 4th down again later in the game. That might have been a little more questionable. This, the one where they were up 24-10 or whatever, I think the decision actually made sense to do, because Matt Prater, I think, is their kicker. He's not that great, especially outdoors. Not anymore, at least. Although I think he did kick in Denver a while ago, but I don't think he's that good anymore. And he's used to kicking in the roofed stadium now. But that was not like a sure field goal with 4th and 2. I think they actually made the right play call, too, on that play there. And they just didn't quite get it done. And the pass could have been caught, too, and it just wasn't. And it looked like originally he was going to throw it to Gibbs, which would have put that prop over. Gibbs probably should have gone over to win me that prop with the receptions over 3.5. He had 3 in the game, but he had 6 targets. And usually a running back will catch almost all of his targets, because they're usually all like checkdowns and short throws. Like, it's very rare that they only catch 50% of their targets. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Like, because you usually see a receiver who has a lot of targets usually see a lower catch percentage out of those targets for like deeper throws, and not the throws to the running back or to like the tight end and whatever. So that was ridiculous. I think that prop probably should have gotten there. And Detroit, I mean, they outstatted San Francisco. They outyarded them. they definitely deserve to cover, even though the 49ers were covering briefly right at the end. And the Lions wound up backdooring it right at the end again on a touchdown very late. But the Lions have been covering and, of course, winning outright for the rest of that game. And they obviously should have covered and probably should have won the game outright, like I said. But you had that, of course, after the failed fourth down attempt that did kind of hurt them because their defense did not come back out and play. Their defense played quite well in the first half. I was actually more correct. The matchup, I was more right about the matchups in that game than I was about the situation. So I probably should have stayed off of it from a betting perspective because Detroit's run defense was really good in the first half. They definitely and they did really well offensively too. And their rushing attack was beating up San Francisco's kind of sketchy run defense. So I was kind of right about all those, everything I said about like the matchup there. But then, of course, after the fourth down conversion, it kind of shifted the tone a little bit. But the defense couldn't really maintain the tone because it did at least start San Francisco back in their own territory. But then, of course, they wound up scoring a touchdown. But it was on that. It was right after that Ayuk catch that turned an interception into a touchdown drive. Basically, the throw was terrible by Brock Purdy. He threw it basically right to the defender. Just a deep bomb. It was a totally uncatchable. There was no chance for his receivers to catch that or for Ayuk to catch that. But then, of course, it would have been a really difficult interception, but it bounced right off the defender's hands when he was diving, and then Ayuk somehow was able to dive and catch it. That is not Brock Purdy making an amazing throw, dude. Not at all. That was just such fluky shit. And then on the very next drive after that, Detroit fumbles on the first play, loses it, and then all of a sudden it's a tied game. That's just some fluke shit, man. I wanted Detroit to do it in the end. And, of course, obviously I wanted Baltimore to do it. Nobody's going to want to watch the Super Bowl. I hope the NFL's ratings tank. Everybody is sick of the Chiefs, more than sick of them. I hate the Chiefs. Everybody pretty much is sick of it at this point. Taylor Swift, Pfizer, just get rid of it, please. Just stop. So I would have to root for the 49ers in the Super Bowl over them. And I don't think it's going to be betting with my heart when I say that. I think you should actually bet on the 49ers in the Super Bowl because the line came out San Francisco 2.5 with, or maybe even with juice, maybe even 3. And then it immediately dropped down to 1. But I think that 3 or like 2.5 is a more accurate line of like where the line should be. I think San Francisco should probably be about a 2-point favorite in the game with the way they've looked like such trash against teams that they should have beaten more easily in Green Bay and Detroit. People are going to see that they struggled against those teams and see, well, Kansas City has Patrick Mahomes, who's won 2 Super Bowls, and they just beat Buffalo and Baltimore, the 2 other best teams in the AFC. Like, how is it possible that Kansas City is going to lose this game? How am I getting? And now I think it's a point with Kansas City as an underdog. That's what people are going to think. I think the public is going to come in on Kansas City in this one. I like San Francisco in the Super Bowl, and I don't envision that changing. So I think that's probably going to be the way it happens. I don't know when we actually want to play it. If we can potentially get an even better number on San Francisco, I don't know, but we'll see. But it's at like -1 right now, and there's probably decent money line. Probably you can get decent money line prices on that as well. Today, yesterday I did win on the Memphis Grizzlies. That's why I went 2-3 at least. All right, so go Memphis, I guess. Now, moving to today, crap, my Firefox isn't even working right now. Come on, man. Moving to today, I got 2 plays in the NBA. There is college basketball. There's 1 hockey game, and I don't even think it's worth spending time on the hockey game. I'm not going to have a play on it. I just can't read the hockey game. There isn't really any situation for me to read there. College basketball, Duke and Virginia Tech is one of the 2 big games tonight in the ACC. Duke's up from 3 to 3.5. I don't know what the KenPom number on this is, but Duke had a scare against Clemson on Saturday, so I would expect Duke to probably be in the better situation to refocus and actually play a good game here. Although they historically, they've had some difficulty going to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's tough at home, and Virginia Tech will certainly show up for a game where Duke is coming into their house too. So that's the way that I look at that. I would lean to Duke slightly, though, just because I think that Clemson game really put a scare into them, so they're going to have a more focused effort in this one. And then Houston is down from 6.5 to 5 at Texas. Texas is really not very good, man. They're pretty much out of the tournament by all like the bracketology experts right now. So I think Texas is going to show up for this, though, because they need some sort of big win, signature win, and beating the number 4 ranked team in the country would certainly help them out. And they're playing little brother to Houston in the sport of basketball at this point, because Houston's been so good the last few years. They've been stacked, even though they've had some guys, make the NBA and stuff like that and get drafted out of the Houston team. They keep reloading and having really good teams at Houston. And some of their guys stick around for multiple years too. So it's a combination of stuff there at Houston. KenPom, I think, has this number at like 8. So I don't think you're getting much value in the line if you're taking Texas plus the 5. I would not want to lay the road price with Houston either, though. So, and Houston, I mean, I think Houston will probably show up as well because it is a big game at Texas. So Texas still carries a lot of name recognition. So I kind of expect both teams to show up in that one. And Texas, man, when it comes down to it, Houston is definitely the more physical team. So I don't know what's going to wind up happening here. Texas, I don't know what that was at BYU on Saturday. And BYU beat Texas by margin at BYU. BYU is really good at home, and I think they're an underrated team still. They've been underrated, under the radar pretty much all year, and they're better than people think they are. I'm playing pretty well in the Big 12, even though they just moved to the Big 12. But, of course, for the Big 12 teams that have to go to BYU and they're not used to it, that's not easy for them. Texas went in there, but BYU's crowd, there's, I think, in the student section, they're, of course, very they're like a pretty furious home crowd. They really get into it, get loud, but their student section had like shirts that spelled out down horns, I think is what it was. Like whatever it was to like to turn the horns down or whatever. And the refs made them take those shirts off. Luckily, it was mostly dudes wearing those shirts. Maybe not lucky for us. I don't know. But it's totally ridiculous that Texas can carry that amount of weight with like the NCAA, where like the NCAA will actually tell a student section at an opposing team's venue to take off shirts that don't even spell out anything that anybody could be offended by. Really, down horns, like really. I mean, come on, man. They made them take those shirts off. Because these soft Texas boys, they can't deal with it. Whatever, man. Texas, they wound up losing the game by margin, and deservedly so. I'm sorry. That was just ridiculous. Moving on to the NBA today, we do have, what do we have here? Clippers, Cavaliers. I don't know what to do with that game because both teams are off really nice wins. The Clippers just absolutely blasted the Celtics. So I would think that the Clippers probably are in the worst situational spot out of the two of them. They got to be on they're like totally in like high and mighty mode after they absolutely destroyed the Celtics and dealt them by far their worst home loss of the season, and having to play a third straight road game now in Cleveland. Probably, it is a really bad spot for them, but Cleveland is returning home from a 4-game road trip where they played Milwaukee twice to finish the road trip and won the second of those. So they've beaten Milwaukee, I think, because they blew out Milwaukee the game before the road trip, which was without Giannis, though. And so they've beaten Milwaukee 2 out of 3 games within their last 5 games. So I don't like the spot for Cleveland either. I think it is worse for the Clippers, though. Clippers are down from 3 to 2.5 with juice on the road, but they have 86% of the cash with 64% of the tickets over on the other side on the Cavs. So I don't know about that one, but I first looked at that game. I'm like, oh man, it's such a good spot to go against the Clippers, off of that blowout win over the Celtics. So then you look at the spot the Cavs are in, and it's like, you just can't do it, man. Can't do it. But I'm on 2 plays in the NBA today. The first one is on the Washington Wizards, but it looks like the market is against me, kind of. Spurs have kind of just been sitting around 4, although it looks like it's ticked down to 4 with reduced juice. But it looks like they also have 64% of the cash with 80% of the tickets on the other side on the Wizards. I don't know why that would be the case, though, really. Like, could the Wizards really be a public team, even though it is the San Antonio Spurs? I think the public is more likely to come in on the Spurs, I would say, because they have the better record by 1.5 games or whatever, and they have Wemba, who everybody knows. Everybody loves Wemba. He's a rising star in the NBA, whereas Washington does not really have any type of presence like that there. So I wouldn't expect San Antonio to not be the public team, or rather, I wouldn't expect the Wizards to really be the public team here. So maybe we'll see market shifting on this. I don't know, but I don't like the San Antonio spot because they just beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that was on a back-to-back and a third game in 4 days, although they were all at home, and they're still staying at home here for a fourth game in 6 days. So fourth game in 6 days, not the greatest rest spot, although they haven't had to travel, but beating Minnesota, man, that's a big win. You beat one of the best teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA, really. And now you step back down and class to face Washington, who, by the way, San Antonio just beat in Washington on January 20th. So there's kind of this quick road revenge angle coming into play for Washington here, which is a better angle than just any plain old revenge in the NBA when it's a quick revenge for a loss on your home floor, which is the case with Washington here. San Antonio just went into their house and beat them on their own floor. So I think that's going to focus Washington here, whereas you have San Antonio coming off probably their biggest win of the season against the Minnesota T-Wolves. Huge win on their home floor. And now they're just staying at home, and they get the lowly Wizards, so they just beat on the road coming in. I don't know if they're going to have total focus on the Washington Wizards. Meanwhile, the Wizards, they just beat the Detroit Pistons to start this 2-game road trip 2 days ago, and that broke a long loss streak for them. I mean, the Wizards, all they're doing is going on long loss streaks. They suck, but they were on a 6-game losing streak, including a game where they lost to Minnesota at home. So people might look at that too and say, well, Washington just lost to Minnesota at home, and San Antonio just beat Minnesota at home. So, of course, San Antonio is going to be able to beat Washington as well, right? Because San Antonio just beat Minnesota, who beat Washington. So this is easy. I'll lay the points with San Antonio, who's a slightly better team here. It's not that many points. It's down to 3.5, actually, at some spots here, I think. So I think that's going to be kind of what the recreational bettors are going to come in and think, but I don't think so. And like I said, Detroit knows that back on Detroit, Washington. Oh, man, I'm getting my horrible NBA teams mixed up. Washington knows San Antonio just came into their house and beat them not long ago on the 20th. So I think Washington's going to show up more focused for this one than San Antonio will. It's a letdown spot for San Antonio. And Washington, having beaten Detroit in the last game, I think that's good. That breaks that loss streak that they had. It'll start some new positive momentum, I think, for them coming into this game. I don't think it's a look ahead to the LA Clippers, man. I don't think you can really have a look ahead when you have 8 wins on the season. I think San Antonio, at least they're up to 10 wins at this point, the double digits there. I think Washington is the team that's less likely to show up unfocused in a game like this. And they kind of know they can win this game too. And plus, like I said, San Antonio just beat them on their own floor. So I like Washington plus the 4 points in that one. And then the other play I'm on is the Portland Trailblazers. It's plus 9. You might be able to get 9.5 on this the way that it's looking right now. You might be able to wait around a little bit and see what the best numbers you can kind of get here. This is the Philadelphia 76ers laying 9, up to 9 with juice at Portland. I don't like the spot for the 76ers. The 76ers, I think they're going to overlook the Portland Trailblazers here, man. 76ers, they're coming off 2 bigger games. This is their third game on the road trip. It's a third game in 5 days because they've had games that they've had days off in between each one. But they played Indiana and lost, and that's a pretty good opponent in Indiana. That was on the heels of Embiid putting up 70 points against the San Antonio Spurs, though. So, in a way, the 76ers were in a bit of a letdown spot after that because everybody was just talking about Embiid 70, man. Embiid putting up 70. They didn't play well in the next game after that. Maybe I should use that as an angle. I should have gone against them after that. Same thing happened with Dallas, I think, too, when Doncic put up 70 or whatever it was on Friday night. I think they had to play in a back-to-back, though, right after that. And I think they played a much worse game, and I think they lost the game after that on Saturday. So that those 70-point performances seem to also put teams in letdown spots and make them overvalued. But for the Philadelphia 76ers, so that was the spot where they lost to Indiana. Then they played another road game, and they lost to Denver, and it was a close game, and they only lost by 6 in the game. It was a game where Embiid did not play. He had a knee issue, I think, and they might have given him some rest as well. He probably wasn't completely unable to play, but they gave him some rest. So I think he is probably going to play in this game. But then again, that's kind of like this weird lineup shakeup thing where he didn't play in that game, and they played a big effort game and played really well at Denver, at the returning champs, in altitude or in elevation, and only lost by 6. Now they're coming out of elevation, having to go to Portland, and they have Golden State up next and Utah, even though Utah hasn't been good in recent years, but they went on a nice streak a little while ago, and they're definitely a better team this year than they were last year, at least. And Golden State, of course, still at least carries a lot of that name recognition and carries a lot of weight because of the stars they still have on that team. So this is a sandwich spot sandwiched in between Denver and Golden State. So even though people might think, well, the 76ers are going to bounce back from these losses, Embiid might be back to play in this game, they're going to Portland. They'll bounce back here. I'm not so sure about that, and 9 is a lot to lay on the road here. So I like the Portland here in this one. And I think we might be getting a little added value because I think Portland's actually on a back-to-back. And usually I don't like playing teams that are on back-to-backs, but Philadelphia put in a max effort against Denver, man. And that's what they're coming off of, even though Embiid, I guess, will be fresh in a way on having not played in that one. And then you got Golden State up next, though. I think they could overlook very lowly Portland team pretty easily. And Portland's got to do something, man. They've lost 2 in a row, 4 of their last 5. But they were to the Lakers, Oklahoma City in the first 2. They beat Houston in overtime. And these first 4 games are all on the road. And then they lost at San Antonio, which is pretty ugly. But it was a 4th straight road game. Then they came home, return home spot, never a good spot, really. And they lost to Chicago. That's pretty ugly, too. So now I think they're in a much better spot to refocus, though, because when you have a team that returns home from a road trip, you get those road trip return distractions coming into play there. They only had 1 day off there. So, yes, they are playing a 3rd game in 4 days, doing a 4th game in 6 days, and I usually don't like doing that, especially when the first 3 of those were in different cities, so it's not the easiest spot, but because they had an ugly game in their first game back from the road trip. I think the second game back from the road trip tends to be a spot where you refocus a little bit off of that ugly performance. You got a big team in Philadelphia coming into your house, so it's a pretty big game. So I think the Blazers will show up focused for this one. So I like it. I think Philadelphia is in the worst spot here, having this game surrounded by bigger games, whereas for Portland, it's that second game returning home, despite it being no days off in between the two. At least there's no travel there. And last night's game was the game where I think they kind of lapsed focus because they're probably having to get stuff done around home and whatever. I think they'll be focused for this one. Now the second game back home, so I like that one too. So those 2 plays are the Wizards plus 4.5 plus 4 Washington Wizards. I think 4 is the best you can probably get right now. And the Portland Trailblazers plus 9 or maybe 9.5, whatever you can get on that. That's going to do it for me today, man. Let's start turning this around. Have a good start to the week. Hopefully we do. Peace.